One of the conspiracies that I've always found interesting was, do casinos cheat? And you see these things all the time on, these movies like the Ocean's movies and Rounders and all these gambling things and cards and whatnot. So is that a thing? Used to kind of think it was. But then I had an interesting conversation with a professional poker player. And then I got a little bit of the inside of how that actually works. You're betting against the house, and the longer it goes. But he said, and I asked him one question that had always bothered me. I said, as you play, I said, the dealer doesn't know. He said, you can't judge by how many different people are at the table. Who knows? I mean, so what? How does that work? He said, why does the table suddenly go cold? I mean, it gets hot. They put in a new dealer, and the table goes cold. And he said, because it's a new deck. I said, what do you mean? He said, when you take a deck out and shuffle it for the first time, he said, that's the only time that deck will be like that. And basically what ends up happening when you keep reshuffling the deck, when you use 2-3, he says you start working the randomness out of it. So you've got to get a new deck. And working the randomness out of it, that doesn't even make sense. Well, it kind of, but statistically it does. So basically the house it's a 55-45 house advantage. So I was thinking about that, about how Dex works, and then I was watching some YouTube stuff, and then they started talking about this guy that's been kicked out of every casino in Vegas. He claims that casinos are cheating. Well, no, he was kicked out of Vegas because he was cheating. And I went over this. Well, then, Sammy Gravano, Sammy the Bull, had a whole thing about it. And he was talking about how, back when he was a mobster, there were guys that would cheat. They'd deal off the bottom. He said, but if you did it too much, he said, you'd always get caught. He said, the games would get tainted. He said, but truthfully, when the mob would play, he said they never cared who won or lost because they were always getting a percentage off the pot. So they were making money no matter what. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, they're making their money. They're hosting the game. They're getting a percentage. And then they were talking about, x-ray tables and hidden cameras and, things that read cards and all of these other things. And, it didn't make any sense to me because, one, you'd have to have an IT guy. But then he started talking about you had the dealer, you had the pit boss, you had a second pit boss, you have all these other guys, and you could potentially have 5 to 7 guys per table. If you haven't been to Vegas, you know how many poker tables there are? You'd have 4, 5, 600 guys just trying to make sure the house won. If this was actually happening, 600 guys a shift, do you understand that this is not something anybody could ever keep quiet? It would have leaked out years ago. And truthfully, the casinos don't want cheaters. They know, statistically, once that money's on the table, you're going to play till it's gone. That's just how it works. The longer you're there, the more you give away. Very few people actually win, take their winnings and leave. Now, they don't want that, but they're not going to stop you. These CEOs and these corporations that own these casinos, these aren't mob-run casinos. These are corporate-owned. They don't want the reputation. They don't need the reputation. They want people to come there. They want families to come there. They want you to come there, drop a bunch of money, and go home. you know, true, there's guys out there that can deal off the bottom or can deal out of the middle. And I mean, humans have figured out hundreds and hundreds of ways to cheat. But these casinos, they're not cheating. Now, the one thing that I don't trust is the slot machines. I know there's nothing that's truly random about those. I can get on certain machines here in Sioux Falls and pretty much start predicting when I've played them enough to know I can know when they start hitting. If they hit here, the machine's going to pay. If they hit here, it's just going to play with me. If it doesn't hit at all, just call it a loss and leave. It's just, they're predictable. And the fact that they're predictable tells me they're not random. But they are machines, and they are, they just pay, they don't pay, they pay, they don't pay. And that's maybe where the randomness comes in. When the machine starts loading up, it starts dumping. You never know. But that being said, these big casinos cheating, I just can't see it. The amount of personnel that they'd have to have. Oops. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Oh, where are we? I have a hard time with mounts. The amount of personnel they'd have to have, it would just be mind-boggling. They wouldn't make any money doing it. That's the irony of it. They'd spend all their money in overhead on equipment that they would make no money trying to keep people from cheating. Well, no, trying to cheat the people at the tables. The table gets hot, new dealer, new deck. And truthfully, there's a lot of guys out there that'll bet with the house instead of against the house. I mean, the house always wins. Bet with the house. Basically, what it is out there is statistics. Look at a roulette table. Yeah, sure, you've got black and white, black and red, but then you've got a black spot and two green spots, or gray spots, if you will, depending on what roulette table is. It's truly random. Never quite understood craps. But there's some people that are just gifted at it. I am not. I played it a couple times. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. But here's the thing. There's a lot more to this, I think. But for them just outright cheating with gadgets and gimmicks and personnel and all that, no. Come on, guys. It's a casino. It's a business. And it's a business based on statistical risk. And the statistical risk will always be in the house's favor. That's it. And here's the thing, though. You're saying they're making billions of dollars a year. Of course they are. But truthfully, of all the money that comes in, they're probably making a 5% profit. If you're to believe where it's a 55-45 split, that ought to tell you how much money is cycling through that casino every year, every day. So if they're making that much money, there's 5 times that amount being paid out. You've got to pay out to keep people coming back. So, and after all, sometimes people do win. If you have a casino that people aren't winning, or at least have the illusion of winning, you're going to go broke because people aren't going to play there anymore. So, the CEOs aren't going to risk everything to try to cheat you out of $20 extra. It's not worth their time. It's not worth their gaming license. It's not worth anything. So next time you're at the casino playing cards, it's just a statistical risk. And these guys that figured out how to game and this and that, and all these things talking about how the casinos cheat, they're not cheating. If these guys know how to cheat and they got kicked out of Vegas, chances are they were the ones cheating and they got caught. Because, well, the house has seen this before, and the house always wins.